Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baseball Beat. I'm Dan Lavallo. We're not going to include an interview in this latest edition of the Baseball Beat. More of a commentary, and it has to do with a story which appeared in The Athletic. And The Athletic does have a paywall. I subscribe to The Athletic. I will link to the story in my show notes. Has to do with baseball. First of all, a funny thing happened on the way to that World Series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Yankees. The Dodgers lost. Now, that doesn't mean the Yankees are going to go to the World Series, but the Yanks have made the Final Four. In fact, they were the first club to make the Final Four. We'll let that go for a moment, but I'm not going to be one of those who subscribes to, well, the last thing baseball needs is a Washington-Tampa Bay World Series or a St. Louis-Houston World Series or a Tampa Bay and a St. Louis World Series, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to subscribe to that because I think baseball is really an acquired taste. If you're a baseball fan, you're going to follow the game. Doesn't matter if you live in Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, New York, or wherever. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I know there are some who are going to look at the map and of the surviving teams going into tonight's game between Tampa Bay and Houston, the deciding game in the remaining ALDS. If you look at all the teams still alive in the postseason, they're all, except for Houston, the old-style teams east of the Mississippi, like in the old days. So there's that notion, well, anybody who's west of the Mississippi doesn't care. But again, I go back to what I said before. If you're a baseball fan, you're a baseball fan, and somehow, some way, you'll follow the games. Let that go for a minute. I'm not the biggest numbers man in the world, but I do like numbers in a way if they just fit together. And the Dodgers lost to the Washington Nationals last night. Now, keep this in mind. The Dodgers have not won a World Series. The Dodgers, one of the franchises considered the best in baseball, right? One of the landmark franchises in baseball. Hallmark is the word I'm looking for, really. One of the hallmark franchises of baseball. And they haven't won a World Series in 31 years. Think about that. 31 plus 31 is what? 62. Well, on the date that the Washington Nationals eliminated the LA Dodgers from the postseason, a postseason where the Dodgers were expected to not only go to the World Series, but win the World Series. On the date that the Nationals eliminated the Dodgers from the World Series chase, knocking them out of the playoffs, it was 62 years to the day, 62 years to the day that the Dodgers had announced they were leaving Brooklyn. And Brooklyn was in mourning. Have 62, 31 years since they won the World Series. Amazing. And someone tweeted to me, because I put that tweet out, at Dan Lavallo, someone tweeted back to me, and the Dodgers were ousted on what would have been Dodger owner Walter O'Malley's birthday. The former owner of the Dodgers, the owner who moved the Dodgers out of Brooklyn to Los Angeles. Now, to be precise, the Dodgers actually announced on October the 8th that they were leaving Brooklyn, but of course the story didn't make the papers until the next day. Front page story of the New York Times, October the 9th. On the day that people were awakening, reading in their newspapers that it was official, the Dodgers were leaving Brooklyn. Well, on that date, the Los Angeles Dodgers, expected to win the World Series 62 years later, were ousted, and now it's 31 years they've gone without winning a World Series, their high payroll and all. Now, back to baseball. This story in The Athletic, written by Evan Drellich, is fascinating reading because it references Generation Z. How do you keep Generation Z interested in baseball? And it quotes a social psychologist, Rich Luker, who has been tracking the interest in sports and what makes a fan since 1994 with his sports poll. In fact, as Evan writes, There's an official name to the poll, SSRS/Luker, and baseball subscribes to that. And it's more than just attendance. It's more than just television ratings, because you're going to be hearing a lot about this. In fact, you already have when it comes to baseball. Oh, baseball attendance is down. It's dropped again, blah, blah, blah. But even though the commissioner, who's quoted in this story, baseball commissioner Rob Manfred, of course he's concerned about attendance figures. Even though the commissioner is concerned about attendance figures, the fact of the matter is, it's more than just people going to games. It's people subscribing to the app. It's people watching online. It's people watching on television. It's people listening to the games on the radio. And it's people going, and I'm so happy to hear this, it's people going to minor league baseball games. Well, why am I happy to hear this? Well, along with the voice of the Yard Goats, Jeff Dooley, I've broadcast Hartford Yard Goats games. I've broadcast minor league baseball games for decades. And so I'm happy to see and read and hear that the attendance at minor league baseball games and the interest in minor league baseball games does have an effect on the interest in baseball overall, as this Luker poll points out. So good for Commissioner Rob Manfred, who points out that, yeah, you can make the case that baseball attendance since 2007 has dropped to below 70 million fans per season, but do not forget that 110 million people this year, this is Commissioner Manfred stating this now, and he's so on the money with this, 110 million people this year watched a Major League Baseball game or a minor league baseball game live. That's key. And Luker points this out in his poll. Now, how detailed is this poll? Well, as the Athletic story points out, Luker's poll collects more than 20,000 interviews per year. And although he doesn't agree with the commissioner on every point, he does agree on some, including the fact that a lot of the Generation Z crowd, in addition to the Generation X crowd, and of course the millennials and the baby boomers, are going to minor league baseball games. They're still following the sport. They're following the sport in several ways. MLB's At Bat app, which sees a year-over-year growth, 18%, sees its subscription base up 15%. I can go on and on. So let's say it's a Washington-Tampa Bay World Series. You're going to read, well, the last thing baseball wants is Washington-Tampa Bay. The last thing baseball wants is this game. The TV ratings are going to be down. Baseball attendance is down. No. Let's look at the overall picture. Check the Luker poll, and you will find, does baseball have to address issues? Pace of play, the length of these games. I mean, these playoff games in many cases aren't ending until near 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. Are those issues that have to be addressed? Yeah. Baseball has always addressed these issues. But baseball's a healthy sport. And for those who love to preach the doom and gloom of baseball, there's probably an element that never liked baseball to begin with. And so they follow that avenue in their debate. But I've been around long enough to know that this argument about baseball is boring and the death of baseball is just around the corner, they've been preaching this for more than half a century. And they're wrong. Baseball is alive. Baseball is healthy. If you have a subscription to The Athletic, I urge you to read this story. This Luker poll is an eye-opener. And sure, baseball needs to fix some things. Every sport needs to fix things. But I don't want to be hearing about this degradation of baseball in the postseason, because certain people aren't baseball fans, and so they relish harping on the game. Yep, the game is healthy. And enjoy the postseason. I've enjoyed the postseason so far, and I'll continue to enjoy the postseason. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like I said, I'll link to this on my website, sportscasterdan.com. And to specifically get to my podcast page on the website, just go to thebaseballbeat.com. You can also subscribe to the podcast. I'm at all of the podcast directories. And if you'd like to email me, my email address is dan@danlavallo.com. And enjoy the games.